Hello and welcome everyone. Today I want to fulfill a request from some of my viewers who asked for an abstract country stat chart. And for that, I have a big thank you to Cheesewheellord who helped me with this video. You'll find the link to his YouTube channel in the video description below. As soon as you arrive in the abstract industrial, you will have access to soldiers, rangers, machine guns, and after researching them, even to trench mortars. Soldiers are the basic infantry unit that has a high fire rate with decent damage and fires quickly, after being given the command so that you can micro these guys very well. Their cost is not too high, so it's a good option for defending yourself quickly and effectively against remaining medieval armies, but also against mounted guardsmen, rangers and cavalry. With a rather low aviation damage, I do not recommend them to protect yourself from incoming air units, especially not well armored ones like the bomber balloons. Instead, you should recruit rangers as a mobile and effective anti-air unit. They have a higher damage and a great precision, but a lower fire rate than soldiers. Their aviation damage makes them a real threat for balloons and planes alike. The machine gunner has an even higher range than the ranger, but very poor accuracy, which means they can open fire early, but will probably have to shoot a second salvo in order to hit the enemy troops once they are closer. Each unit costing 1000 resources is a bit expensive, and you should be aware that this is rather a defensive unit. That comes with a huge downside: it cannot attack air units at all, which might be one of the reasons why they are a rare sight. After researching them in the arsenal, you can recruit trench mortars, the only infantry unit of the First Industrial Revolution that is designed to destroy buildings effectively. However, their low speed, slow firing rate, poor precision, slow projectile speed, and even the delay they have when being ordered to shoot makes them rarely useful, but with their range of 300, they can safely destroy towers of any era and thus slowly put pressure on your enemy. On the other hand, they don't have strong defensive values or a high HP, so that you need to defend them with other infantry if you want to push your enemies on open territory. If you had stables in the medieval era, you can upgrade them directly into industrial stables, which allow you to recruit cavalrymen, a melee cavalry unit with high speed and decent damage output. An enemy who is late to reaching industrial or simply doesn't have the resources yet to upgrade his medieval houses might lose all of his medieval houses to 15 to 20 cavalrymen if he cannot protect them well. In the factory, you can recruit the armored car, which is a slightly armored machine gun with low range but high mobility. A few of these can harass an enemy's economy very well for a longer period of time, while the ranged attack doesn't require access to every position on the map, and shooting enemy workers behind a wall or a forest becomes an option. The howitzer can also be recruited from factories without any research. Their high damage and range of 300 allows them to destroy buildings, but also tanks and other armored units reliably from a safe distance, and are in my eyes to be preferred over trench mortars. This unit is overall very popular, and I can recommend to get some practice with them. You can recruit tractors after having an arsenal and a university, which you should both get anyway. The tractor is a great vehicle to improve your food economy at a low population cost. It gathers food at a rate of 10.0 for a population cost of just 3, while 3 industrial workers gather only at a rate of 5.4. Not every nation has access to them, so I recommend you to have at least 4 to 5 of them whenever you get the chance, depending on how food intensive your army recruitment is. I usually recruit 5 of them, and once my food is up to 30 to 40,000, I might delete one of them or send the extra food to allies who cannot build tractors themselves, like China, Japan and India players. After researching light tanks in your arsenal, you can produce the first tanks that can be pretty difficult to defend against if your enemy is not prepared to deal with armored units yet. Rushing them is fairly difficult, but even a spam of them can disrupt the enemy's plan and force them to pull their armies to wherever you are attacking them, especially on land maps where your team controls a lot of territory and you can get close before having your plans revealed to the enemy. This unit can become really dangerous. The airfield can be built once you have an arsenal and a university. From the airfield you can recruit balloon type air units which do not occupy the airfield and just fly across the map at a low speed, but without the need to refuel or reload ammunition. Planes, on the other hand, will occupy an airfield and have to land there after depleting their fuel or ammunition. Recruiting more units from an airfield makes it impossible for your planes to land there, and so they will crash if you don't have enough free airfields. The first balloon type unit is the military balloon, or as I call it, the SMG balloon. It has a single soldier with an automatic weapon equipped on board and can effectively defend against low armored air, land and naval units. It is never a bad idea idea to have a few of them in your base to defend yourself against early air raids or even artillery rushes. The second balloon type unit is the bomber balloon, the reason why I feel safer having some SMG balloons in my base. These well-armored balloons drop bombs every 8 seconds at close range, but despite their low mobility, a large wave of them can turn the game around if well timed. The first plane is the light fighter. It allows you to hunt down enemy planes and bomber balloons, and its damage isn't that bad. However, the pathing of planes makes their use feel kind of awkward, and that might be why you rarely see these in combat. The second plane is the light bomber, which allows to quickly defend yourself or an ally from incoming tanks and artillery, if you don't have anything sufficient to deal with them yet. However, they don't pack many bombs, and it might well be that you cannot destroy the entire enemy army before having to reload your bombs with this unit. So it's more of a supportive defensive unit, but also a great raiding unit for early bombing runs on enemy bases who might not have the air defense they need just yet. And in docks, you can recruit trawlers that are the fishing boats of the industrial era, but as you have access to tractors, it is more population efficient to use those instead. Also, it can help to leave some fish to your allies, and tractors are often not as vulnerable to naval raids as these squishy boats. The machine gun trawlers are often used to establish some kind of sea control and deny the food income from fish from your enemies. Even something as heavy as a battleship can fall to a spam of MG trawlers, thanks to the battleship's minimum range. The battleship is a slow naval unit that has the potential to destroy your enemy's docks, and possibly their base close to the sea, but requires support from MG trawlers and torpedo boats to defend against enemy ships that come too close or air units. The torpedo boat fires slowly traveling torpedoes, and it can fire at air targets, but due to its low speed and short range, it is more of a support unit and shouldn't be sent in all alone. However, if you expect the enemy to travel across water with either bomber balloons or a steamboat packed with an army, then having a couple of them might keep you alive to die another day. The steamboat can only be built once you have a factory, and it has no armament itself. Its only purpose is to provide 50 seats for your army that you would like to land on the enemy's beaches, because the enemy's beaches are always nicer than your own beaches, and because fighting on the enemy's land feels more comfortable anyway. Providing vision through a battleship and support with air units like SMG balloons can be a good idea to protect the ship against enemy MG trawlers, but if they expect you to come across the water, then you shouldn't get your hopes up, as the steamboat is very squishy and slow. Let's move on to the units that you can recruit in the second industrial revolution. In your barracks, you can now recruit SMGs. This is the default infantry unit in the late game, which costs no metal at all and allows to defeat any weakly armored unit in the water, on land and in the air. Their speed makes it possible to flank into the enemy's base while always coming out on top against any type of cavalry, and even being able to destroy light armored vehicles in a reasonable time if you have enough SMGs. Only buildings and well-armored units will be a problem for these guys. The grenade launcher unit is in my eyes the better alternative to trench mortars. As infantry, they travel at medium speed, and 30 to 40 of them pack enough damage to send an enemy back to the menu. If you can get close enough to fire a whole salvo, that is. A popular strategy is to hide them in APCs, which have seats like a steamboat, and travel them safely into range. These guys can also deal well against any armored units and buildings, but struggle against infantry and cavalry. Attacking air units is not an option either. If you have a factory, you can also recruit the motorcycle unit from barracks. This is the best armored unit from the barracks you can recruit as abstract, and the reason why abstract is absolutely viable, even in the late game. Their high speed, high damage, okayish armor, and potential of dealing with infantry, cavalry, artillery, workers, towers, and even light tanks, if you have enough of them, makes them a real pain to your enemies. Their cost is still lower than those from a machine gunner, but might be an issue when you first start producing them from 10 or more barracks. However, they are definitely worth it, and except for Germany, no other industrial country has access to them, so your teammates will definitely appreciate it when you send these nasty machines to the front line. After researching the damage upgrade for trench mortars, they deal 50 damage per shot, but their reload time goes up from 8 to 15 seconds. Generally, I recommend it, but I'd recommend even more to not go for trench mortars in the first place, unless the map makes it really crucial to have that extra range when attacking or defending. The second industrial revolution does not offer any new options in the stables for the abstract country. In the factory you will now have access to APCs, which I already mentioned with the RPGs. They are a slightly better armored car with stronger damage, better armor, and offers 5 seats, which are usually used for RPGs but sometimes also for engineers or workers if you want to destroy an anti-tank hedgehog line for your actual army. And to answer a question that will surely come up in the comments, yes, you can load 5 RPGs into an APC and then load that APC into a steamboat where it will not take more seats than without RPGs loaded inside. So you can have 6 fully loaded APCs get loaded on a steamboat and land them on your enemy's territory while quickly closing the distance between them and the enemy's town hall. The next unit you can produce in factories is the squadron cannon, which reminds me of any anti-tank gun of World War II that I have ever seen. With a range of 400 and 250 damage, you risk less when trying to push your enemy or just keep them a little safer when you need to defend against a tank rush. However, their pure damage per minute is lower than that of a howitzer because of the long reload on these squadron cannons. Also, the resource cost of a squadron cannon is more than double that of a howitzer. So keep that in mind when making the decision of recruiting squadron cannons or howitzers. After researching heavy tanks in your arsenal, they become recruitable from your factories. With a good amount of armor and structure points but a low speed and damage, I cannot really recommend this unit at the time being. A slow and large target that gets countered by any unit that is meant to destroy buildings, which any player needs sooner or later anyway, just cannot build up enough pressure to become dangerous to your enemy. And if you think that these can counter infantry at least, well, they could if they didn't have the minimum range of 30, which usually leads to your enemy surrounding your tank, blocking it from movement, and if you have multiple tanks, then they will destroy each other in the process of freeing each other. In your airfields, you will be able to recruit 2 new planes, the IR-2 equivalent of a bomber plane and a fighter plane. The IR-2 fighter plane is still a rare sight despite having slightly better stats and a longer time in between refuels. The pathing of planes might be just too much of an issue for players to really get comfortable with these, and most things you can achieve with them can be achieved more easily with either bomber planes or anti-air turrets. The IR-2 bomber plane on the other hand is not a rare sight, and many players enjoy raiding an enemy base with this unit. Focusing on expensive buildings like the arsenal, factories, or economic buildings like a university, farm, and even tractors. Each raid can damage an enemy player twice. First, by the damage you deal directly, and second, by forcing the enemy to build anti-air turrets, further costing them resources. If you do 1 or 2 well-timed bombing runs and don't show up anymore once they have anti-air turrets placed, then you have done everything right, while your bomber planes can still be useful focusing on enemy units at the front line. In the docks you will now be able to recruit a submarine, which fires a torpedo like the torpedo boat can, but it can submerge, which makes it invisible in the water unless the enemy has air units or a balloon tower with vision on your submerged submarine. I haven't seen this unit being used a lot, and I think its main potential is defending against enemy ships safely from underwater. But that can be achieved with land and air units, which are more versatile and therefore to be preferred. That was it. All units of the abstract industrial faction and their stats. It is likely that the stats will change in future balance updates, but for a first idea of what units you should make use of, this video will probably remain at least partially relevant in the future. Please don't hesitate to ask your questions or share your feedback in the comments below. Thank you everybody for watching, and see you in the next one.